Thanks very much, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started now. Very good turnout. I don't think I can take credit for it. All right, we're going to get stuck into it. So thanks, everyone, for joining. I'm very excited to be able to host Cuy. I'll let him introduce himself. And then we don't have a lot of time, and we probably got about 2 days' worth of material to cover, so we're going to get straight into it. Cuy, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, great to be here. I'm Cuy Sheffield. I'm the head of crypto at Visa. I came to Visa through the acquisition of a company called TrialPay in 2015. I didn't know anything about Visa. I woke up one day and they said, your company is being bought by Visa. I was employee number 100, so I had nothing to do with it. After I got inside of Visa, I started going down the payments rabbit hole, just trying to understand this 3D chess and the history of Visa and how it came about. And I was learning everything I could about payments, and I'd ask people about Visa about crypto, and this was 2016, 2017. And they just really didn't know that much about it. And then I'd go to crypto meetups, and I'd meet people who knew everything about crypto, and I'd ask them about payments, and they didn't really know how Visa worked. And so it seemed very clear to me from the early days that the future is some intersection of the two. And so no one asked me to work on crypto. I was just the crazy crypto guy that said, I want to spend the next decade at how crypto and payments come together.
Very cool. And I should introduce myself as well. I'm Dave Engel. I'm head of business development for StarkWare. All right, starting kind of at the highest level, why is Visa interested in Web3?
So first, when most people think about Visa, they think about VisaNet, the card network. And in many ways, we were kind of the original layer 2. We're a permission layer 2 that does instant authorizations at 100 million merchants across the world, and then we settle on existing bank infrastructure like Fedwire. But that's one product. And so Visa is a payment technology company. And a lot of our growth is really around new payment flows beyond just consumer to merchant. And so we think a lot about B2B, think a lot about P2P, about B2C. And so there are all these different transaction types that exist that Visa is still in the very early days of providing solutions that can improve them. And so we really see ourselves as we want to be this network of networks. We want to be a single connection point for clients to move value over any network that exists. And so we look at blockchains as just this exciting new space where many networks are developing. They have interesting properties. They're global. They work 24/7. They're permissionless. And so we're really focused on how do we leverage these new blockchain networks, connect them to our existing products, and build brand new products on top of them for the future.
So I'm curious about the internal mechanics of how a company like Visa actually gets into this. So I want to spend a little bit of time just talking about kind of the crypto culture, how Visa's into it, and then we'll talk more about the technology as well. So you're very clearly very passionate about it. You understand it very well. How is crypto viewed kind of at an aggregate level or at an executive or board level within Visa?
So I'd say overwhelmingly we view it as an opportunity. And I think it's something that we've made a little bit of progress, every week for the past, 4 or 5 years, in just trying to understand it. And Visa is full of just payment nerds. We just care about how money moves. And so it's very hard to be excited about payment technology and ignore all of the amazing innovation that's happening with people in this room building brand new technologies to move money. And so I think a lot of people look at it and say, oh, is this a risk to Visa? As I mentioned, there's still so many other types of transactions and payment flows that we don't power today. And so we're really excited to see how blockchains can expand and grow our business. And we think that's where most of the use cases will be. And we can talk about how consumer to merchant payments in developed markets are pretty much solved. They work very well. But there's still huge opportunities to improve payments in emerging markets. There's still huge opportunities to improve ways to move value in payouts instead of pay-ins. And so we think that the future of payment innovation, I put it in really a few buckets, and there's RTP networks that are popping up across the world, and there are blockchain networks. And figuring out how we can tap in and leverage both of them, we think is a big opportunity for growth for the company.
So can you help us understand why blockchain is better for some of those use cases you spoke about? So we're used to here, credit cards work very well. Where I used to live in Australia, credit cards work incredibly well. So it's hard to conceptualize why all of a sudden I would now go like peer to merchant or peer to peer on the blockchain. So in the kind of markets that you're talking about, can you talk a little bit about why blockchain is like a superior solution for you to go to market with?
So I think first we think the key innovation is really the combination of blockchains as new rails and stablecoins. We don't see a lot of demand for people to spend volatile cryptocurrencies. And so we think the opportunity is being able to represent fiat currencies like dollars and transfer them over this new set of payment rails. And so when you combine those two things together, it becomes a way that you can move dollars cross-border that can be faster and cheaper and more efficient than many ways that you move dollars cross-border today. And so if you're in the United States, if you're only making domestic payments, if you have a dollar-based bank account, I don't think you really need stablecoins and blockchains for your day-to-day payments. Maybe NFTs, maybe Web3, but there are people all over the world who would love to have access to dollars, don't have great ways that they can make cross-border payments. And so we think that blockchains will be a powerful tool that is more global, that has a lower barrier to entry, particularly for developers to build on top of. And increasingly, we think developers will end up building the future of payments. And so being able to have these new networks and the ecosystems emerging around them, the type of products that can emerge, I would argue it's much easier to build on top of a blockchain network than on top of some legacy infrastructure that exists today.
And so, I mean, this is like a fundamental shift in like the paradigm of what Visa is today, which is a closed network. Banks, issuers are able to access it, merchants are able to access it, but developers building on top of it is relatively new. What is the shift like? What shift is required within Visa to go from network to platform, which like what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think first, we spent a lot of time just really trying to understand by playing around with and experimenting and using the technology. One of the first things that we did when we set up the crypto team is we started setting up self-custodial wallets for many of our executives. And we walked them through, here's how to set up a wallet, here's how to make an on-chain transaction, here's how to mint an NFT. And we've seen over time how much it has improved. It used to be only seed words. It used to be you're waiting for the transaction to confirm, and you're paying $20 for gas. And now even seeing some of the things that Itamar and team at Argent are building, the experiences that you can create ultimately are getting to the point where you don't have to know that the blockchain exists. And that's where we think the end opportunity is. We don't think that mainstream consumers will necessarily have more affinity to a blockchain network than they do to internet protocols. They shouldn't have to care. They should just be able to use an app, and there are going to be technologies underneath the app that enable value to move. And so it's really been understanding how these products can be used. And we think that the distribution and creating great experiences is what's going to matter at the end of the day, and we need to abstract more of the technology away.
And so where do you see Visa playing a role? Like if we think about blockchain as a platform, what are the different kind of aspects within the blockchain where you see Visa playing a role?
So the first area that we started was really looking at how we could incorporate blockchains into our existing network to move money faster. And so as I mentioned, we're this layer 2. We can authorize payments 24/7, but when it comes down to actually move the money and settle, we settle over Fedwire, we settle over Swift. We can't move the money as frequently as we'd like because there are a number of limitations that exist in those networks. And so we've been experimenting, we've publicly announced, we've been testing how to actually accept settlement payments from issuers in USDC, starting on Ethereum, and paying out acquirers in USDC on Ethereum. So these are large value settlement payments. And so that's been one of the areas where we want to build the muscle memory that the same way that we can convert between dollars and euros on a cross-border transaction, we should be able to convert between digital tokenized dollars and traditional dollars. And so learning how to do that within Visa Treasury has been the first area. And then the second is, what can we do entirely outside of Visa today? And we think that particularly with stablecoins, there's a big opportunity for stablecoins to power many different payment flows, but sometimes you need trust, you need governance, you need things like disputes. A lot of people in this room might say, okay, these are irreversible transactions, that's a huge feature. When you work in the payments industry and you see how often things go wrong, it's actually a big bug for a lot of mainstream payment flows. And so we're thinking a lot about how do you take some of the value that Visa provides on existing bank rails with existing forms of fiat and rebuild that on top of blockchain rails using stablecoins. And we think there are huge opportunities in that area as well.
So just kind of staying on the merchant payment side for a minute, can you just explain, like, let's nerd out a little bit for a moment on payments, how like the merchant payout works today on a credit, like on a card network, and then from there I want to understand like what is the new paradigm with blockchain?
Yeah, so you can think about Visa actually settles between an issuing bank and an acquiring bank. And so you go and tap
Can
your
you
Visa.
explain the difference between issuing and acquiring bank?
So the issuing bank provides you with your card. And so they're the brand that you see on the card. You go and spend that card at a merchant. We can instantly authorize that transaction. But then when settlement happens, we basically send a bill at the end of the day. And we say, hey, issuing bank, your customers in aggregate spent X amount. You owe us that amount. And then the acquiring bank, which is the bank for all of the merchants that you spent at, how much Visa owes them. And so then at the end of the day, we facilitate receiving a wire from an issuing bank and sending a wire to an acquiring bank. But this only works when FedWire is operational. And so you can't do that on a Saturday. You can't do that on a bank holiday. And so the idea that we're in 2023 and we're the most sophisticated global payment network, but we still can't move dollars over a weekend, where blockchains are a 24/7 global network that you can move dollars over. And so we've started to experiment with, can you have issuing banks or fintechs who are issuing cards settle and honor those obligations by sending USDC over a blockchain? And they can do that on Saturday. They can do that on Sunday. And so just simple things like that, where the 24/7 global nature of blockchains underneath the existing rails that work very well today can have a number of improvements in our business.
Yeah, I mean, it's so self-evident. Why hasn't it happened yet?
It takes time. And I think in many ways, in general, we've been waiting for blockchains to scale. And there have been a number of solutions, but they've really been pretty big trade-offs. And so we're excited to see, it feels like we're at this point, and just being in this room today, where blockchains are starting to scale without sacrificing security, without sacrificing decentralization. And so going from that dial-up to broadband era for blockchains, we think is a huge improvement. And then there's the infrastructure side of it. For a large established enterprise to learn how to manage private keys securely, it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of time. There are a lot of risk reviews. There's a lot of security considerations. There's a lot of conversations with regulators. And so any large company that is starting to move money on chain, and then you think about things like privacy. Well, what does it mean as an enterprise to move money over a public network? And that's something different that we're not used to. And so the way I look at it is, it's inevitable that it's going to happen. It's just, it will happen incrementally, and we'll make a little bit of progress every week. And what we hope is that Visa can really show to the payments industry that there's a big opportunity for this technology, and we can lead the way that many other payment companies will follow in the future.
Would you be bold enough to make a prediction when you think it's like meaningful? You're feel free to decline.
So I'm not going to make any specific prediction. I think the way that I look at the opportunity for stablecoins and payments, I see 2023, 2024, really a lot of the value will be these back-end large value settlement use cases, things that payment nerds love, but like individual consumers are not aware that it's happening. I think we'll also start to see things like B2C disbursements, where just this question of payouts. If you have global merchants that have small sellers that are all over the world, how do you actually pay them? And so many people think a lot more about paying in than paying out, and that's where stablecoins can become interesting. And then getting to P2P, where as wallet experiences get better, being able to have products that look and feel like a global Venmo. And so I think we'll see kind of the development in those phases over the next few years, way before consumers are going in and paying merchants with a stablecoin. It'll be the other use cases that get adoption first.
So not next year, but not 10 years.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So just switching tack a little bit to how we kind of met and how we started collaborating. So very quick background. So I've been doing BD here for 6 months. About 2 months ago, we got an email from Visa saying we've done an experiment on Starknet. we're going to publish a research paper. Do you guys want to review the research paper? And we said, this is great. We reviewed the research paper, really exciting. And then maybe another month later, Visa submitted a tweet. So Catherine, who's in your team, tweeted about it, and it just like caught on like wildfire. It was amazing to see kind of the virality and the interest. And all of a sudden, I'm getting all these pats on the back for saying what an amazing job I've done from a BD perspective. When it's literally the easiest. It's shameful for me to even call it BD. It was the easiest. So anyway, we reached out to Cuy and we said, okay, well, we should chat. And so here we are. Can you just tell me from your perspective how you basically came about to start to engage with the Starknet ecosystem?
Yeah, I think this is the value of permissionless innovation, and we're building a culture on the team that we want to be crypto native and experiment and get our hands dirty of actually using these advanced technologies. And so we had a number of engineers that got really excited about Starknet, started playing around with Cairo, and so they just started writing some smart contracts. And it's something that we're spending a lot of time around. How do we teach these skills internally and build that competency? And so it really started around a lot of crypto payments today are what you'd call a push payment, and so it's initiated by the consumer. And that doesn't work very well for many things that we all pay for on a regular basis. Most of you have subscriptions to some service. Can you imagine if every month it was time to pay your Netflix or Spotify subscription and you had to pull out your wallet and you had to sign a transaction? And so many things that we do as a network are just auto payments. It's set it and forget it. You subscribe one time and just enabling payments to happen in the background. And so we got really excited about how do you enable these pull-based transactions in stablecoins over public blockchains? And so then we started going down the account abstraction rabbit hole and saying, wait a minute, this makes a lot of sense. The idea that the value in your bank account, the analogy with payments, if your card number literally controlled all of the value in your bank account and that card number never changed, if someone else got access to it, all of your money would be gone. If you lost it, you'd never be able to get access to it. It just doesn't really make sense. And so we're really excited about the flexibility that account abstraction enables, both with better consumer experiences and with enabling these pull payments. And so we ended up, our engineers started writing some smart contracts to showcase how you could do pull payments, leveraging account abstraction on Starknet. We published a paper around it, and it's really just the beginning days for us of how can we start to deploy smart contracts out at scale, out in the wild, to be able to facilitate stablecoin payments. And we want to learn as much as we can about every new protocol that is starting to scale. And as we started spending time with the Starknet team, just incredibly impressed with the talent in the ecosystem that's emerging around it. And so we're really interested to see what we can do together over time.
And what does Visa look for when you're engaging with the protocol? What are the things that are important to you guys?
So we kind of had this conversation last night. I think there's so much focus in the space on transactions per second. And it's almost a meme now that it's always, okay, who's going to beat Visa on transactions per second? And theoretically, we could do 65,000 transactions per second. What can you do? That is not something that we actually spend a ton of time on. And the reality is Visa does on average a few thousand transactions a second on a normal day. And so the theoretical limits really don't matter. It's really a question of what is the demand. And so it doesn't really impress us to say we can do 100,000 or 1 million transactions per second. We care a lot about security. And so payments infrastructure is critical infrastructure for economies. And so what is the cost to attack? What do the security models look like? And how could you actually scale this to mainstream products? I think that's one critical area. And then two, what developers are building on top of it. And increasingly, we spend a lot of time with fintechs, with early stage crypto companies, and we're very partner driven. We want to build products with partners in mind. And so we like to spend time in the ecosystems that our partners are starting to get involved in. And so I think having the ability to scale doesn't have to be crazy transactions per second, but it has to be usable with security and a developer ecosystem are probably the most important things that we look at today.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure hosting you in our ecosystem. Thank you for your support and for joining us. And hopefully this is the beginning of a long and fruitful relationship.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.